click on 5.3, adding evens. The exercise is kind of similar to what Gauss had to do that I showed you in the last lesson. But in your case, I want you to calculate the sum of all the even numbers from 1 to 100, including 1 and 100. So, for example, it might be 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 8 and so on and so forth until you get to 100. It's a little bit more complicated than what the 10-year-old had to do. And the important thing to remember is that there should only be one print statement in your output. It should just print the final total and not every step of the calculation. So have a think about how you might solve this challenge, pause the video, and try to give this a go. Alright, so there's actually quite a few ways that you could have solved this challenge. Now, one of the ways would have been using what we learned from the last lesson and the ability to create a range function using a different step size. I'll show you what I mean. So let's create a for loop where we say for every number in the range between 1 to 100, so that's 101, then we're going to do something with each number, right? Namely, we're probably going to create a variable called total, and then we're going to add each of the even numbers together and accumulate it inside this variable. Now, remember that I mentioned that the range function actually has a third thing that you can add to it, not just the start and the end, but also the step size. So we can change the step size to 2, and then now what it's going to do is it's going to go through 1 to 100, and it's going to increase the step size by 2. So that means if we print this range as it is right now, it's going to give us 1 plus 2, which is 3, plus 2, which is 5, and so on and so forth. But if we change the range to start off from 2, which is the first number that we have to start adding in our sequence, and then increase it by 2 every single time, then we end up with a range that includes all the even numbers up to 100. And I'll show you if I run this code right now. So the next part is simple. All we have to do is to add the number to the current total. So total plus equals number. And then finally, outside the for loop, we can go ahead and print that total. Now, when I go ahead and run this code now, it's going to give me just the total. Now remember that the indentation really matters, because if I have it like this, then it's going to give me the total for every step of the calculation, because it's now included in the for loop and will be executed for as many times as the for loop runs. But if I remove the indentation, then the for loop is just this, and this is outside of it, so it's only going to give it to me once everything has been done and I've got the final total. And it's the correct solution. But you might have also done it in a different way. You might have said for number in range 1 to 101, and you had some sort of another total, let's call it total 2, and started at 0. And then we say that if the number modulo 2 is equal to 0, so if it's even essentially, then we're going to add this number to the total 2. Finally, outside of the if and outside of the for, we're going to print the final total. And now if I just run the code, then you can see I get exactly the same number as before. So if you chose to solve this challenge in either of these ways, then you've succeeded. They're both right. And there's probably even other ways that you could solve this as well. But these two, I suspect, will be the most popular approaches. Now, in the next lesson, I've got another coding exercise for you. And it's probably one of the top interview questions that programmers get asked when they're being interviewed for a job. So head over there and give it a go.